You've actually implemented somewhat of a program called the Believers Inc. Can you give me some insight on that?
You got to understand 5 basic elements. The first aspect would be the mental realm, right? Like, how does the human consciousness work and how is it related to your breathing?
Okay.
Once you understand that, you master the skill of breathing. So that would be skill number 1.
Okay.
Skill number 2 would be mastering the skill of movement. You need movement to live. Without movement, you don't exist. So mastering the skill of movement is really about learning how to build muscle, how to build strength, how your muscles interact with each other to create strength. And how do you build new muscle? Yoga is one aspect. You can do swimming, you can do running. There's lots of ways, but movement begets movement. The more you move, the better you get at it. It's really based on your individual body habits, but the skill of movement is something that you have to practice on a ritualistic basis.
These are the 7 skills of scripture is what we're going through right now. Okay.
Correct.
That was, we got, the first one was breathing. The second one was movement. And the third one is?
Think about the third skill as every living creature has to eat. Trees have to eat the fertilizer that they need. Just as they have that carbon dioxide to oxygen exchange with the environment, they also have that soil exchange of nutrients with the root system. Animals are no different. Humans have to eat whatever the trees produce. We can get it from the trees or we can get it from the animals that feed off the trees. Think about it as all life is separated in flora and fauna. You need the flora if you want to have the fauna, and you want to have the fauna if you want to have the flora. Trees and animals go hand in hand. So if you want to be mindful of your eating habits, you have to know where your food is coming from. So that's really what skill number 3 is about, is learning the skill of gardening so that you understand what goes into creating the food that you're eating. So there's an interesting thought puzzle. The best source of nutrients are fruit. And the easiest to produce are fruit trees. You plant them once, 1 apple will give you thousands of apples every season. Nobody plants fruit trees. Why is that?
Everybody should have a fruit tree. Definitely, there's nothing better than picking that fruit right off the tree and having it. Every tree out there should be a fruit tree.
And if you look at the Bible, right, there's actually a passage where Jesus is like, you will know the believers by the fruit trees. Eating fruit is good for you. Everybody acknowledges this. Everybody signs off on this, from Eastern to Western medicine to you just liking the taste of fruit. Fruits are tasty. They're delicious. Eat more fruit. Know where your food comes from to say, hey, maybe I don't need that processed food and I can have that strawberry and that apple instead. So if you start eating based on what is healthy for you, you really have to be cognizant and aware of where your food and how it's being grown and what was the distribution that got it from the farm to the table. And that's where skill number 3 comes in, to say, hey, learn about gardening so that you can have an informed decision about what you're eating. Maybe you don't need to harm other living creatures in order to feed yourself. There's over 1 billion people in India who are vegetarians. They have been for generations. So this thought experiment that we need that protein, that's really a very Western short time span that they've been thinking about.
Learn the skill of gardening. You mean that literally, right?
Learn the skill of gardening so that you can educate yourself about what you're eating. And of the skill of gardening, there's one thing I want to point out. A forest does not survive by a single tree or by a single strain of vegetation. You'd never have a forest that's purely one species. So if you want to practice the skill of gardening, you got to practice the entire ecosystem. That means you got to recognize that there is 7 different strains of vegetation in every square foot of the forest. Because if you think about a forest, there's the tall trees, there's the short trees, there's the shrubs, there's the vines. So if you wanted to plant a actual food forest, you would want to plant it as an ecosystem and say, hey, I'm going to pick strains that are all edible and plant them together so that I have a full 7-layered forest that is mimicking the natural state.
It's almost like common sense. We need trees anyway.
And we're all over here mowing our lawns every weekend because like our life depended on it and making sure that grass stays green. And you're like, wait, but grass is unnatural in the first place. It doesn't exist in nature. I've never needed to eat grass.
The cows do, but all right. It's not as complex as we think it is. Shouldn't be.
Natural state is very simple. It wants to be in a state of balance. And finding that balance is all about trying to say, hey, this is the ultimate natural state. And humans can create an infinite number of unnatural states. There's only one natural state. And these skills are really about like informing yourself of are these natural states, and just try to work towards them as much as you can. You're not going to get there overnight.
Nothing happens overnight, that's for sure. So for the gardening, what would you say? I don't want to get into it too much because it's another conversation. The GMOs and all these other pesticides and harmful ingredients that are in our foods these days, that's definitely another main reason or why we definitely should acquire our own skill of gardening.
Go to part 7 of this interview to learn the key health benefits of gardening.